Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webcast from London Research and Censhare, entitled The State of Universal Content Management 2020. By way of an introduction, my name is Linus Gregoriadis, Director and Co-founder of London Research, and I'll be one of the two presenters for today. London Research specialises in thought leadership content and is part of the Communitized Group. Our sister brands are Digital Donut, the world's largest community of marketers, and Demand Exchange, which is a B2B lead generation platform. I'm pleased to say that during this webinar, we'll be unveiling the highlights from our 2020 State of Universal Content Management Survey, with insights and recommendations around what this means for your business. Before we start, I'll quickly run through some housekeeping points. Please note that we'll be recording today's webcast and we'll create an on-demand version that will be available soon after the webinar's conclusion. Feel free to share that with your colleagues. And the webinar should last just under an hour. It would be great if you could submit any questions at any time during the session. We will endeavour to answer as many as possible during or at the end of the webinar. Questions can be submitted very easily within the On24 webinar platform. You can also access the full State of Universal Content Management report within the resources section on the toolbar. You should be able to see that. And we're also going to be asking 3 poll questions during the webinar. So it would be great if you could participate in these when they come up, and one will be quite soon. Okay, so I'd now like to introduce my fellow presenter for today, Matthias Wirth. Matthias, please can you say a few words about yourself and Censhare?
Yes, thanks. Thanks, Linus, and welcome everybody from our side as well. I'm head of marketing at Censhare, and let me allow some words on Censhare because I assume a lot of you people have not heard from us. We are a vendor, software vendor, of what we call a pioneering universal content management platform. And what does this all mean? I mean, we touch a bit later in the research anyway on this topic. But basically what we do, we help our clients to connect with their audiences, and mostly in any channel, in any language, locally or globally. And we seek and we seem to bring freedom to create, how we call it, to our clients. A couple of things in there which we will touch later because a lot of them are really actually drowning in content-related complexity and work. So in the end of the day, with our system, they create, they manage, they deliver quality content, and they do so very effectively. We are not a newcomer. We are founded 2001, have about 350 and more clients globally, including the likes of Jaguar Land Rover, Christie's, Dyson, Hearst, McDonald's, Lufthansa, and many, many more. As you might hear, hopefully not too bad with my accent, we are a German company based in Munich, but have locations in the US, UK, European Nordics, France, Switzerland, India, and about 260 team members and an international partner network.
Okay, great. Thanks, Matthias. And I think to start with, it would be great if you could define, as is what you guys specialize in, what do we mean exactly when we're talking about universal content management?
Yeah, so like I said, we are not a newcomer. We actually come out of a long history. Even before 2001, there has been a company before out of the publishing industry, right? An industry which had the very hard content problem way before a lot of corporations really went into full-scale content. So we learned a couple of things there, and we developed a system which then evolved into enterprises. And what has happened over this time is that the customers we serve have been put under pressure by an ever-increasing amount of output channels. And what has come up also on the business side is a kind of a need to unify or to unite, consolidate, and even automate content processes. That affects almost all enterprises as we see it, or corporations, but it's especially true for large enterprises and for product companies. And in this case, without talking technical, universal content management is a practice of bringing content and data together from all sources within the business into a unified and single tool, and often, in our case at least, an underlying also unified and central user interface. And this helps them to control content processes in the whole organization and to actually serve every part of the user experience. As you might have heard in this explanation, it's of course driven by various industry needs, which we need to react on behalf of our customers. They need to manage content, data, digital assets, and so on from different departments, all sourced centrally. This is a strive, at least. They need to serve omnichannel experiences, and there is an ever-growing desire to centrally measure content performance. So this is what it ultimately helps with. And the benefits our clients see and realize are a huge reduction in time and costs, up to 70%. It enables a smoother and more collaborative content production. We are talking about 70 or more percent gains in efficiency with some of our clients, and it also allows a rapid response to new challenges and opportunities. In our case right now, when we talk about the really crazy situation our world is in, we just had a call last week with a huge client from Sweden, a cosmetics company. I think they are responsible for the biggest or third biggest print shop in the world. They have a catalog of 160 pages in more than 60 languages, produced and printed every 3 weeks. It's incredible. And they had to move into home office, this whole production worldwide, within 1 day of notice. And they just did, without any problem. And they were so helpful, or so grateful, actually. They called us and wanted to do a case study now, which makes me happy, of course.
That's great. Okay, so that is the essence of the research we're unveiling today around, i.e. around universal and integrated content management. The methodology for the research, just quickly, we surveyed more than 700 business professionals in Q1 this year. They were mainly working client side, they were mainly brand marketers, but we also especially in the report, we have a lot of breakdowns by client side and agency respondents. And essentially, the research we're looking at today really paints a picture of what organizations could be doing to become more efficient with their content management. And the focus with the research is, it applies to all companies generally, but the focus, especially in the report, which you can access, is on larger enterprise organizations. And it's worth saying that the survey was most of the respondents were in February and early March as well. So that was relatively early on in the current COVID crisis. And I guess we need to appreciate that things are changing all the time. With that in mind, we wanted here to ask our first poll question. So please do participate in this. And you can see that the question is, how has COVID-19 affected your overall marketing budget in 2020? Has it massively increased? And, well, lucky you if it has. Has it slightly increased? Is it about the same or roughly unchanged? Has it slightly decreased, or has it massively decreased? Just give you a few seconds there to type in your answers before we go to the results and then on to the survey findings. Okay, so we can see here that around 2/3 of you say that your marketing budgets have decreased, slightly more saying that it's slightly decreased, thankfully, rather than massively increased. So, I mean, I guess this is the context. So, content management is happening within an organization's broader marketing and customer experience programs. And I think most of these findings would have been very similar with or without this crisis. But obviously, the current needs to be borne in mind because that's affecting content management along with everything else. Okay, so the first part of the research looks at the benefits of an integrated and centralized content management system. And what we wanted to do in this research is initially identify a group of organizations within the sample who we wanted to call leaders, and then see what this group of companies were doing differently in the context of their sort of capabilities and characteristics with respect to content management. So we could then use that information to give you recommendations about what you should be doing more of to become a leader in content management. So this chart shows the results of a question around an explicit question: have you as an organization, or did you have an integrated and centralized content management hub? And we can see here the leaders on the left, around a third of organizations who have this integrated content management hub in place. And the remainder of the organizations, who we call the mainstream businesses, are either working towards that integrated central hub, or they're quite far away from that because their content management is fragmented across different platforms and teams with no plans actually to integrate. So let's move on to this next slide. Why are organizations striving for a more efficient and unified approach? It's important to understand what the benefits are, and we can see here that the primary drivers of unified content management are around, I guess, slightly softer business objectives, such as improved quality of communication and engagement and improved perceptions of brand. They're the top two, and that's the case for both smaller and larger organizations. We can see also in this chart, I guess, harder commercial objectives such as increased sales and reduced costs as well. But I know Matthias had a few points to make here as well.
Yeah, and actually also for me, a bit of a shocking one from today. But at first I have to say this is really in line with our experience. And it's a bit hard to tell, but why? But it seems to be, and this is where we usually come in then at enterprises also, that companies have grown over time, have grown their content production, have grown their kind of content proficiency, but not their ability to really effectively manage it. So they are actually drowning. They are completely overwhelmed with the content-related tasks they have put upon themselves over the time without really growing the tools and processes in the same amount. So they are really seeking to come back to this more softer things like improving the quality again, making sure your brand is controlled, working on consistency, and just not have a clear eye on really focusing on the harder things, which would be then really reducing the costs, or which hopefully will come later, but they are way earlier in the process. But taking into account how much the world has changed in this couple of weeks since we did the report, we are expecting really a change to come, and we are really expecting that organizations will require marketing to bring down their costs this year, and that this will have an effect also in driving way harder facts. And I have to say, I almost hope we are just unlucky, but we sent out our newsletter this morning. The usual double opt-in newsletter, as you do, to a group of marketers. We sent to around 15,000 people, have grown over the time. And I was honestly shocked by the amount of, I'm no longer working with this company, automated mails we got back right within just 4 weeks. So it's close to 4 weeks, the latest one. And on one hand, the amount of short-term workage, I will be out for next couple of months is significant, but really also the number of people not working at all anymore was I really had to, take a step back and think, well, okay, now it's getting massive.
Thanks, Matthias. I mean, that's sobering. We've had similar with some emails we've been sending. It really brings it home how many people have been either furloughed or not in work anymore. But ultimately, I think you're right. Over time, organisations, these softer, sort of less tangible benefits around better customer experience, better quality of communication, they'll remain important, but there's obviously going to be a lot more organisations are going to be doing to try and reduce costs, not just in terms of headcount, but also in terms of more efficient systems and technology. The next 4 slides still continue on this theme of sort of benefits and drivers of integrated content management. As part of the research, we asked a series of agree-disagree statements, which could be regarded as important content-related capabilities. And we found for these capabilities that leaders, as one would expect, were significantly, on average, 3 times more likely than their mainstream counterparts to agree strongly that they had this capability. So the first one was, as you can see here, around integrating print and digital workflows for the best possible customer experience. As organizations strive to be omnichannel or multi-channel, clearly they need to sort of break down these silos between sort of online and offline. The customer is not the consumer or customer in the B2B world, just not really interested in these silos that hold back organizations. And to have a consistent and deliver a consistent digital experience across channels, this kind of integration of print and digital workflows is increasingly important. The next capability was around being able to find digital assets quickly to enable more efficient working. And again, leaders around 3 times more likely to agree that they have this capability. So one can't, I think, overestimate the amount of time that's lost within organizations to staff sort of floundering, looking for things in different business departments, different types of asset, different marketing channels to find what they need, whether to repurpose that or update that or to work with that. The third statement or capability here is around being able to add new marketing channels to the mix pretty easily. So that needs to be fairly simple. You don't want to be constrained within your content management to existing channels and tools simply because of, I guess, inflexibility within your systems. When something else, whether that's a new social media channel, new offline channels or mediums come into play, you want your integrated content hub to adapt and onboard that easily rather than it being a real headache. And the final capability is around consistently meeting and exceeding our communication goals. That, I guess, can be measured in different ways. Sometimes it will be quite scientifically measured, and in others it will be a kind of more gut feel whether organizations believe they're doing this. But leaders, i.e. those with an integrated content management hub, are much more likely to do this. So that is good news for the chief marketing officer, and it's good news for the business as a whole. So these are things which capabilities I think all organizations should be striving for, and better or more integrated or universal content management can help to facilitate that. The next section of the research looks at the types of content being produced by organizations and also the range of business departments who oversee content production. And the aim here is really to highlight the scale of the challenge faced by organizations where modern-day organizations where responsibilities can be split across different departments and functions. Okay, so what we can see in this slide is the proportion of businesses that are producing or managing different types of content. We can see here that email comes out on top. So email very much still email is a channel, I guess, that never goes away. Its demise is predicted, but for a lot of organizations, this is still very much at the core of their cross-channel and digital marketing activities. We can see various other types of both online and offline content. And as I said, the idea here really is just to give just to show the extent of different types of content that are being produced. Everything from press releases to podcasts to webcasts to white papers. The list goes on, and this is by no means exhaustive. What we can see here is the teams which have responsibility for content production, and this compares leaders and mainstream organizations. For leaders, there's a wider range of departments empowering more functions to more functions within leaders are empowered around content than is the case for mainstream companies, where responsibility typically resides just with the marketing and editorial teams. And I can bring Matthias in again here.
Thanks, Linus. And sorry to say, but I'm not sure if you're seeing the right slide right now. At least I am not seeing the right slide, or the slide I would have expected.
Okay, should be on 15.
Okay, maybe just hang for me. So what I can say, this is also our experience. Call it leader or call it mature companies in that field. They seem to have developed more power to produce content, and doing so, they have also spread the responsibilities across a wider range of teams, departments, functions in the business. That somehow comes naturally, where smaller or more not as mature companies rely a lot on marketing and some very dedicated functions besides. What's especially interesting for us is to see product teams come high. This is also what we see. We have a heavy footprint in the retail industry, for instance, and other product-related companies where product teams are important and often overlooked also in terms of their content abilities and responsibilities. And this is also due to kind of newer tools coming up, product information management solutions and so on. And what we see with our approach and with our clients is that the combination of product information management and digital asset management and automation really improves the content output of marketing teams and the whole business. Just an example to make it a bit more understandable, Vitra, premium furniture manufacturer, you might know, they have centralized all their content, including all their product information, into one Censhare installation, replaced 7 legacy databases for different channels and different data sources with one, working out of one, and they even brought themselves into a situation where they came up with actually a shift in their business model just because the information was there. When they realized they had actually built a real product information management system for their dealer-focused catalogs and price lists, they started to experiment for the first time in the company history with direct selling via the website, because all the things were there, right? It was just basically having a look at the infrastructure to send it out. And according to the head of group marketing, they have seen extreme increases in efficiency and falling costs coming out of that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Matthias. And I understand that some of you listening in are having some slight problems downloading the full report from the resources section. We will separately, if that continues, we will separately email access to you for that. Okay, one of the key themes we looked at in the research is around, I guess, internationalization of content, which is clearly relevant for businesses operating across different geographies. And in terms of functions empowered to produce content, larger companies were significantly more likely to have regional or local market teams with responsibility for content production. Matthias?
Yeah, I mean, this should come with no surprise, right? I mean, the bigger the organization gets, they operate in several markets or even globally, and of course they understand that a kind of a good or even leading customer experience requires for some sort of localization. And if you go full force on localization, this is not for the faint-hearted, right? Because it affects every aspect of marketing at the end, from the models in shootings or the way you shoot images to moods to text, locations, language, style, tone of voice, and so on, even disclaimers at the end. So we see this a lot with our enterprise clients working in a lot of markets. They require solid content management solutions to help them. The likes of Jaguar Land Rover, BAT, Lufthansa, and so on. It's no surprise. But we also see it with a range of small and medium enterprise clients where you might not expect this. At least was interesting for us to see, for instance, Anderson Howell, the leading process automation manufacturer, so selling heavy industry tools. I wouldn't even know what they really do at the end of the day. Completely hardcore B2B, I'd say, but they have implemented 38 websites globally controlled in more than 20 languages with a very, very granular, high-level degree of global control and local authority, which is really interesting. And having the product and content teams delivering a local benefit for regional markets within a given and tightly controlled global structure.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. And we're going to have some more charts in a moment on that theme around internationalization. This chart quickly shows the uptake of CMS, DAM, Digital Asset Management, and Product Information Management, PIM, which we've already talked about. And again, looking at the difference between larger and smaller organizations, while uptake of CMS is the same for both larger and smaller organizations, enterprise companies are much more likely to be using DAMs and PIMs, and I guess they have the scale and demand for these platforms. A smaller business can still benefit very much from a DAM and PIM, but may not have, for example, a big enough product portfolio to justify extra investment there. So Matthias has touched upon this theme of, I guess, the balance between centralized control and at least some level of autonomy for local teams in the area of content, whether that's governance, management of content, production of content. And what we found in the research was that, we look here at whether or not businesses have a well-developed framework for internationalization of content, and slightly worryingly, only a fifth of larger organizations have that in place. Typically, organizations are still only have a kind of basic framework in place. And I guess for larger organizations, it's harder the complexity means that it's harder to put something well developed in place, although this is certainly necessary for maximum success. So interestingly, the research found that leaders are significantly more likely to centralize control of global governance compared to their mainstream peers, and not just for governance, but also for content creation and content management. Again, companies that are really succeeding in terms of content management are taking a pretty firm grip at a sort of central HQ level. This section of the presentation and webinar really looks at the amount of time being spent on different tasks relating to content, and really helps to highlight some of the inefficiencies where organizations are spending time on things which may not even be necessary or could certainly be automated. So companies are being held back from being more efficient because they haven't got the right processes and tools in place. Okay, at this point we wanted to ask our second poll question, because I think when we're talking about efficiency of content production and management, it's quite, the whole COVID crisis is quite pertinent here in terms of how priorities are, the things are shifting and moving. So the question here for you is, please, for those in the audience, is how have those priorities shifted? And the options here are: there's a greater focus on quality, there's a greater focus on frequency, there's a greater focus on efficiency, or none of the above. And I'll just give you a few seconds here to input your answer. Okay, we can see the results here. So coming out on top there is a move towards quality. So less focus on frequency, but there's also a move towards greater efficiency. So more, around 30% say that efficiency is the main focus here, compared to 44% to that focus on quality. And there is, of course, always going to be a trade-off between quality and frequency to a degree, unless you can put those more efficient processes in place. Another part of the survey was understanding from the businesses who took part the burden of admin around content. And Matthias is keen to talk about this chart. So can I bring you in again here, Matthias?
Yes, sure. I mean, you don't have to read it, right? I mean, you can see how this drills down. A whopping 78% of all marketers interviewed said marketing should be about creating and implementing ideas, actually, and not admin that can and should be automated, and so on it goes. I mean, this all is nice, and I like to see the stats, but it's of course also not really surprising. Marketers, as everybody else, don't like admin and repetitive tasks, and I want more to touch on this idea of adding value, and also because I said this freedom to create, and just to make sure we are not talking about necessarily glitzy agency campaigns and all the, the top crotch of what you would love to do, and maybe don't even have the budget, but also in a very, let's say, modest and workforce setting. There's a lot of value to add, and we just had a recent example with a German customer, actually, called Ursa Farm. It's a pharmaceutical company, leader in their space, working international, and of course, being pharma, they operate in a very, very highly regulated market. As regulated as I couldn't have imagined this, I have to say. Even a post for Twitter has to run through a very, very tight and records-proof approval process, right? And this has been reliable but very inefficient paper-based process. I think involving 12 stations along the way. If somebody was on vacation or so, the process has stopped. And they switched basically just out of this requirement to our solution and digitized the whole process so that everybody can work in parallel, and all of these things are as or even more record-proof as they have ever been before. But they have come down to approximately 1 cycle per day. It was 8 days before or something, and they said that they have doubled their output by 3 or 4 times, just in the amount of marketing and messaging and communication they can get out with the same amount of people and the same budget as they had before.
Okay, fantastic. So what we asked in the survey was the extent to which principally marketers were doing the survey, but where their time was being spent. Was it on planning and creating content? I guess the sort of the higher value end of the spectrum, or was it around ancillary content tasks, things like managing product variants, searching for content assets, adapting content for different channels and local country needs? And what we found that was that most time is actually 52% of time. There's obviously the lines can be quite blurred, but more than half the time is spent on those ancillary sort of content requirements. And actually, as we can see here, within the larger organizations, even less time, 47%, is spent on planning and creating content. So what is holding back organizations from a more fully integrated approach to content management? And this chart shows for mainstream companies who are clearly having the most challenges by definition, where are their principal obstacles? And coming out on top here is the lack of information sharing across the organization, which I think goes hand in hand with the barrier that's third in the pecking order there around siloed organizational structure. They're very much interlinked. And then in second place there, the lack of business case or understanding of ROI. Matthias?
Yeah, thanks. And this is really in line with our experience as well. It seems, from what we see with our client, it seems to boil down basically to the siloed organizational approach, which is actually at the core of all of this. A lot of companies work in silos. They keep information within silos, which is even worse, not because of secrecy or anything, but just because this is the way enterprises are set up, different budgets, different departments, everybody deploys and does their own things. And there's just not the step back and looking from the top and seeing the real value in a different approach, which is also why they fail to see a bigger picture and kind of understand a real business case and the likely ROI. And we've seen it in the slide before. This effect actually tends to grow with the size of an organization. So larger organizations, which could in theory realize the highest benefit of, unifying and making their content processes more efficient, they struggle the most, actually, with silos and decentral structures, processes, departments, budgets, and so on, and of course the necessary change to make something or to implement something else. I probably shouldn't even say this, but we have it frequently that we get approached by several departments from big organizations wanting to buy our software. Like 3, 4-6 departments wanting to invest in the basically same software platform because they manage their own budgets and don't care about the other parts of the business.
That's pretty scary. I think that really illustrates how within some organizations there isn't the extent of these silos. Okay, so before we move on to the recommendations and then the Q&A, I wanted to touch on, I guess, the technology capabilities of a content management platform. There's more in the report, but a particular focus here on integration, which comes out as an important capability, the ease of integration with other platforms for a CMS. And here we show the extent to which organizations say that their CMS integrates with a number of other different business systems, including marketing and things like CRM, as you can see. And what the main takeaway I'd suggest here is that only a minority of businesses are saying they're integrating their CMS with any of those platforms.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting from our perspective. That's a very interesting finding. We've touched on a lot of things in this study and also in the last couple of minutes. We all know this, I guess. Connected customers, channel explosion, competition in customer experience all puts pressure and challenge on communication, marketing, and companies, basically, right? Especially on enterprise and product companies, as I said before. What we haven't touched on is content in itself, because it seems an argument which has long gone won, right? Content is king. This is old news, and effective content is making an effect. Nobody argues that, but the effective management of content isn't very much mature in a lot of companies. This is what we see, while it still clearly is the next step to take, actually. And we have seen a lot of effects already of this inefficiency and siloed structure, especially if it builds up and accumulates with larger organizations. It affects customer experience. It affects the people, the employees, because they spend more and more time on, manual and basically stupid processes. And ultimately, it affects the bottom line. And this chart here shows a kind of a technological representation of this, with this low integration rate across a lot of somehow content and content processes related technologies, right? But what we see, what's interesting from our perspective, from our offering, is this huge difference when we look at where leaders really do something different, when we look at digital asset management and product information management, where we see that the integration of these technologies with content management seems to be a significant differentiation here for more content mature companies. And to us, this is no surprise. Of course not. You need digital asset management to control all your text, copy, templates, files, and whatever you have. You need product information management in some sort to manage the communication of your products. And of course, you need content management to connect with all your systems of engagement. And if you combine all of this, you get a kind of a unified tool, a central hub to manage content for the whole organization, not just one department or several departments, not just one channel. You are able to deliver omnichannel experiences, and you get to a kind of central measure of content performance. But what we also see here, I mean, we are 2020, and we look at the integration rate of that sort, it's still early days, right, for this kind of central approach. So it's not too late, but we also see that leading organizations have started that route and are preparing themselves.
Thanks again, Matthias. We now have our third and final poll question, and it will be interesting. You may recognize this question from an earlier chart, but we wanted to ask you, the audience, what you see as the single main benefit of a more efficient and unified approach to content management. And we've consolidated down the options here from the questions we had in the survey to focus on the most popular answers. But the options, as you can see, are better brand perceptions and brand consistency, improved customer experience and loyalty, improved quality of engagement, more sales, and reduced costs. Please input your answer there before I go on to some final recommendations. Okay, so coming out on top, and this is similar to what we saw in the survey, is better brand perception and brand consistency. We'd rolled up a couple of options there from the original survey, but that's still sort of far ahead of things like the more tangible things like greater sales and reduced costs, which one might have expected to see rising a bit due to COVID, for example. But yeah, improved CX 18%, improved quality of engagement 12%, but better brand perceptions and brand consistency far ahead there, and that is an undeniable benefit of more integrated content management. Okay, so quickly our concluding recommendations, and these go into a bit more detail in the full report. But the first is around generally centralizing your content governance and management through an integrated hub, and I'll ask Matthias in the Q&A what the first steps are to doing that. The second recommendation is really thinking in terms of the broader customer journey and digital experience of your customers and prospects. So you're more thinking about the bigger picture and the full kind of toolkit of content channels, rather than being the slave to a particular channel, whether that's printed assets or web CMS. You need to be flexible as an organization. You need to think in terms of the same sort of content and message disseminated consistently across different channels. So try and get away from a single channel view. Third recommendation is around clearly defined and assigned responsibilities across different functions, across different geographies, and making sure that the whole organization is committed to a process or processes and a framework for your content. And to do that, you really need to carry out an audit of all content-related work being carried out, and seeking to understand what the tasks are that could potentially be avoided because they're being duplicated or could be automated. And the fifth recommendation is recognizing the importance of integration and selecting the right technology accordingly. Find yourselves systems, content management hub, which integrates with other core systems with respect to content and content management. Okay, we hope that was helpful. We've now got time for some Q&A questions. As I mentioned there during the recommendations, I wanted to ask Matthias to kick off where a good starting point is for businesses seeking to work towards more integrated content management, because obviously you can't do everything in one go.
No, that's also what we wouldn't advise. And we've seen big enterprises almost fail with trying to rush it through, conceptualizing everything on sketchboards and trying to implement it in one go. It's not working because it's normally in these cases, I guess everybody who has implemented software is aware of this. It's sometimes software, sometimes vendor bugs, whatever. But in most times, it's that also the change management within the organization gets underestimated, and how much time it takes to root people and processes and departments on new ways of working and structure. So we advise on starting kind of small, picking whatever you like, whatever is your main pain point, starting with the DAM approach, for instance, combining all the media and digital assets of your organization. You have to make sure the system gets interfaced to whatever output channel and delivery channel you have anyway, right? And the good thing is, if you do it like that, you have to move and to transfer and to build your content once, and then you can add additional functionality and additional features, additional channels, processes on one existing platform, because the platform then just grows. You don't have to start with re-implementing and moving information back again from scratch with the next step. It has to happen once, and then you can build it out over time and involve it across more functions, more businesses, more channels, and so on.
Okay, great. Thanks, Matthias. We've got a lot of questions coming in, which is fantastic to see. Thank you very much, everyone. And I'll take one first from Joe. He's asked, do you have any insight on requirements to adhere to, this question's from Jim. Do you have any insight on requirements to adhere to brand standards in a formal way? I'm wondering if it's common for individuals or departments within a large organization to have leeway to produce or contract out content, or is the structure to do so dictated by a central body? Matthias, is that something you can address?
Yeah. I mean, I can just share from our experience, and I couldn't give advice because we see both ends of the spectrum, and it heavily depends on the products you sell, I'd say, how much regionalization and local touch you need versus, having just one or two big products which are the same over the world and heavily B2B. It depends on your approach for marketing. But at the end, what you want to make sure is that you have a tight control in place, right? And that it's system-based and not error-prone manual processes. No matter if you have a full corporate control and just let the departments and individuals and subsidiaries and regions work with templates and just change basically nothing, or you give them leeway, but you have everything rooted back in a kind of approval workflow. Like I said, we see all of this. I think the importance lies in having a clear understanding of what your business needs and putting it into processes which are fail-proof, and not relying on manual work or information stored on local drives or whatever, or email going back and forth. I think the answer lies here.
Okay, great. Thanks, Matthias. Actually, we have got Joe's question now. He's asking, as content production is less reliant on marketing and editorial, does that mean that the accountability for marketing and editorial has shifted, or is the production of content still led by marketing and editorial? Said another way, is the content production in digital additional capacity led by marketing and editorial in a more distributed hub and spoke style content creation model?
It's almost a bit the same as the question before, right? From our experience, I can say, we are talking about, these, when we are looking at this scale, these are heavily engineered processes because it's complicated structures which differ from company to company and from coming from their requirements. We actually see both, right? So we have clients, yes, where the distribution of content has been spread across a range of teams, but they're still sitting one team. Is it marketing or product? Doesn't really matter. Let's say at the top of it, controlling everything. But we have also seen a lot of companies come into a way more, I was tempted to say, democratic approach, where at the end, what are we talking about? We are talking about an end product, right? It's a website, it's a catalog, it's a brochure, or whatever, where different parts are delivered by different functions in the system, and the necessary approval processes are tightly woven within the, let's say, shared and collaborative creation of this. And this can all be done via systems nowadays and help them to become efficient and to change pace and to have the whole production under control. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's still marketing being the owner or fully accountable for everything. I mean, there are differences there, right? You might have let's say, the price list if you are more in a B2B environment and your catalog to your dealers or whatever, which is probably falling under product teams, but marketing is still taking part in the production of this, and you might have more marketing-related campaigns and material where they are the owners, but still need collaboration from different parts of the business. I hope I understood the question fully.
Okay, great. And I guess, Matthias, in terms of the level of centralization of control within Business HQ and the level of empowerment within regions or different geographies will depend somewhat on the structure of the organization in question. I mean, we've seen that leaders are more likely to take quite a tight grip on the governance and content management and content production. Do you see it? Do you see a varied approach across your clients in terms of where they sit on that continuum from very tight control at central HQ to complete autonomy in local geographies?
Yeah, I mean, I should probably have phrased it better. More or less, to get to a tight control is the reason enterprises invest in a system like ours. Right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that everything is sketched from a central place. You know, it might still be that you have some guidelines and these are distributed over the world, and then you have regions which have high autonomy in case of making content decisions, but not in cases of how the overall brand looks, for instance. So then you have a case where it gets even more complicated, where you have, let's say, messaging and tone of voice and maybe even kind of style, at least localization, which you have to enable, but still having to maintain an overall and manage an overall brand. And this is why you then still use systems like this and have some different departments most likely approving different things. And the good thing is that this can happen in parallel, right? Because it's a shared and collaborative work where people can work in real time, basically producing together different kinds of, documents or digital websites or whatever.
Okay, great. And just to say that, to reiterate that we'll be sharing a link to the on-demand version of the webinar afterwards. A couple of people are asking there. There are some questions, unfortunately, we've run out of time, which we can't address, but we'll do our best where possible to follow up individually on those questions. That really, we've run out of time essentially, but I'd very much like to thank you for attending today, for answering the poll questions and some great questions for the Q&A. Please do keep tuned into Digital Donut and London Research for more webinars on and white papers. I'd obviously like to thank Matthias for his contributions today and Censhare for partnering with us on this research. But that's it from us for now. Thank you very much indeed.
And thanks from my side. Thanks, Linus, and thanks everybody for listening in.